we need to do is figure out ways to actually just support the ELA teachers with everything. So hopefully we'll get some ideas. So the goal for today is to be able to describe ways to create a culture of thinking and learning in your classrooms. So what does that mean? Let's start off with an opening thought. I came across this and I liked it. Learning is a consequence of thinking. I want you to take a couple minutes, think about that, be prepared to share. I'll open up a separate screen so you can just jot your answers on the screen. I think you guys should have access to this screen. If not, let me know and I can turn it on. I'm still learning my way around Blackboard. It was to reflect on that quote that, I'll turn it back real quick, that learning is a consequence of thinking. So just kind of to get your ideas on what your thought about that quote is. Awesome. I'm seeing some great thoughts on this. I like when we think we learn. I like if you don't take time to think about something, you don't actually understand, or when you don't understand something, you don't actually learn it. I'm seeing a lot on stuff on time. I like that first one too. If you think you learned, rote learning is not necessarily a true teaching tool. I couldn't agree more with that. All right, great. So, as we move on, I like that. There has to be a science teacher there with the experiments. All right, so thinking about that opening thought, a lot of times the conventional belief is that you acquire the knowledge and then you think about what you've learned. So you need to have the basic knowledge, and then from there you do the learning. In reality, it's the opposite. The knowledge comes on the coattails of the thinking. So what that means is, as you think about the content you're learning, you're truly learning it. And the one example I gave for the last presentation is, I do a lot of sports analogies, but take football. My wife, she doesn't hate football, but she's not as passionate of a fan I am. So she knows a lot of the basics about, she knows offense versus defense, she knows four quarters and things like that. But as she truly is thinking about the game, especially now that my son's here and we tend to watch a lot more football together in the evening, specifically on Thursday nights and Monday nights now. She actually on Sunday night during the Eagles game was screaming at the TV at Chip Kelly for some of the strategic moves he was doing. And to me, that just is a perfect example of that, because she's starting to think about it because she's exposing herself more. And I think a lot of that can work with our students, especially in the content areas, that as they're exposed and kind of immersed in these topics, that's when they're truly going to be learning it, because they're going to be thinking about it. They're going to just be exposed. So what does this mean for us in our classrooms as content teachers? It means we need to create a culture where thinking and learning becomes the norm. So we should be looking for signs that thinking is happening as teachers. So what are those signs? Students explaining things to each other. And in my pop-ins, I'm starting to notice a lot of times in the breakout rooms that this is happening. The students actually are working together. They're providing feedback. They're willing to help each other. And I mean, I think that's a good place to start. Students should be offering creative ideas to each other. This third one I really like, students and teachers both using language of thinking. So that just means using a lot of those key words a lot of times that you'll see on PSSA testing. So for example, let's look at these two pictures. Instead of saying that, say let's compare these two pictures. Instead of saying what do you think will happen when, say what do you predict will happen when. Just changing around some of those key words helps promote that whole culture of thinking and learning that we're looking for. This next one, as a student or a former social studies teacher, students debating is one of my favorite things. And it's one of those things that it takes time to do, but that's truly showing that they actually are thinking about it and in turn learning about the material. Students asking questions is a big one. Synthesizing the information, making those inferences, drawing conclusions, and just showing that deeper level of understanding. A lot of the stuff a lot of ways to do this, and also with the pop-ins now I've noticed a lot of positive and good academic feedback that's very, very specific. I think this is important to provide to the students other than just one of those good jobs or thank you. Just say, yes, good job, your question is right, because, and even if it's just repeating that, or if they're wrong, explain it to them and giving them the opportunity to see why their answer is wrong. Now, to create this culture, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. You're going to have to walk the students through, have a lot of patience, and model. I mean, I can't say that word enough. Model what your expectations are from them, how they should be getting to this level of understanding through thinking and ultimately learning. So some of the ways to do this, prior to reading, provide a purpose for reading. Let them know this is why you're doing this. A lot of times we just say, and I was guilty of this myself, go read chapter 5 and we'll come back and discuss it. Well, that's not really going to make it interesting. Tell them specifically, hey, read chapter 5. Look for these specific points. Following up with that, activate their prior knowledge. Find out what they know, what they don't know, and then hook them in with something, make it interesting for them. This was something the last few years of my teaching, like I really worked on, was just trying to what way can I make this interesting for you? Have them make predictions based on their prior knowledge, based on the hook that you gave for them. Have them look at pictures, have them look at the headings, all those different things, and go back and have them create questions then. Hopefully those questions as they're reading are going to be answered. Use graphic organizers, and along with that, make sure it's the appropriate graphic organizers. There's certain things you're going to use a Venn diagram for, and there's certain things that you won't. But graphic organizers help lead to the next one, taking notes on their own. I think that's a very important skill, especially in the content areas. And it is something that I think is important for students to learn, and a lot of times it's overlooked. But that whole note-taking skill is important. Now, this table over here, I'll send out to you after the presentation, but just goes into a little bit more details and asks some questions about how to create that culture. So when they're reading and when they're finished, this first one, especially with a lot of the ideas we use in social studies, focus on comprehending and understanding the material over memorizing. And I know somebody put that on the share out sheet there, but that's important. To me, I would rather students know a lot of the ideas behind the Civil War rather than on this date, this person did this and this happened. Understanding the whole idea and the concept and being able to apply it to other real life scenarios is way more important than knowing in 1861 this is what happened. And I kind of touched on this already. Make those real world connections. Is there any way that the Civil War can connect to things that are going on today? Obviously, it's a different time period, so it's not going to be all the same, but there are ways, and hopefully once this culture is starting to be created, the students can actually start making some of those connections. Obviously, reviewing the text and the structure. Are there charts? Is it a fiction piece versus a nonfiction piece? Is this somebody's opinion, or are they given facts? And there's that model your expectations of thinking. Let the students inside your mind just so they can see what actually goes into the thinking process. It's very important, no matter how simple it seems to you. Maybe this is the first time a student is actually being exposed to something like this, so let them and give them the opportunity to see specifically what steps you take as you're thinking before reading, during reading, and then after. And then encourage them to explore other resources related to the content. Have them get on the internet and check out some websites. Watch the History Channel, watch the Discovery Channel, read magazines, newspapers. That way, again, you're creating the excitement for it, and they're going to be more exposed to it, which in turn is going to help them learn it better. All right, so we're winding down here, but what I want you guys to do is take 5 minutes, reflect on your own teaching, answer those 3 questions, and then shoot them over to me in an email. And then what I'll do is I'll send you a copy of this so you can at least get 2 copies of those tables. And then in the meantime, if you have any questions, I'll be here. But thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.